gubernatorial candidate. Thank you so much for having us in your homes. Thank you for watching. Lou Dobbs is next right here on the Fox Business Network. Have a good weekend.
Good evening, everybody. President Trump standing up for the safety and security of all Americans. His courage and commitment to national security in stark contrast to the radical Dems' denial of the crisis rampaging on our southern border and the unforgivable weak-kneed indifference of 12 rhino senators to the cartel smuggling of deadly drugs and illegal immigrants and their sex trafficking across the Mexican border. For the first time in his presidency, Mr. Trump exercised his veto power, thereby killing a resolution that sought to block his national emergency declaration. President Trump slammed Congress for opposing his constitutional power and obligation to protect the American people.
As president, the protection of the nation is my highest duty. Yesterday, Congress passed a dangerous resolution that, if signed into law, would put countless Americans in danger, very grave danger. The Democrat-sponsored resolution would terminate vital border security operations by revoking the national emergency issued last month. It is definitely a national emergency. Rarely have we had such a national emergency. Therefore, to defend the safety and security of all Americans, I will be signing and issuing a formal veto of this reckless resolution, and that's what it was.
We take up the president's veto and his determination to end the national security crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. Former ICE Acting Director Tom Homan, social media stars Diamond and Silk join our guests here tonight. A North Korean official warning that dictator Kim Jong-un may end his diplomatic talks with President Trump and resume testing of ICBM missiles. Secretary of State Pompeo today said he believes Kim will keep his word, his promises made to President Trump at their summit in Hanoi.
In Hanoi, on multiple occasions, he spoke directly to the president and made a commitment that he would not resume nuclear testing, nor would he resume missile testing. So that's Chairman Kim's word. We have every expectation that he will live up to that commitment.
We discuss the latest with North Korea and China's unrelenting cyber attacks against the United States over the past 5 years. General Jack Keane with us tonight, and we will have the latest from New Zealand. The president offered his condolences and support to New Zealand's prime minister after a gunman shot and killed 49 worshippers at 2 separate mosques, leaving dozens more injured. And that tragedy, our top story tonight, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern calling today's tragedy among the darkest hours in New Zealand's history. The killer chose to carry out the senseless violence against Muslim worshippers during Friday prayer services. Fox correspondent Greg Palka joins us now with the latest.
Lou, along with 49 people killed in this attack, 87 people are said to have been injured. 5 heavy-duty weapons as well as explosives were involved as New Zealand and the world comes to grips with this far-right carnage.
Horror in usually peaceful New Zealand. 2 mosques in the city of Christchurch, the target of terror attacks. Dozens of men, women, and children killed and injured. White nationalism the apparent motive. The carnage began when a heavily armed man burst into one packed mosque during Friday prayers, going from room to room, gunning down everyone in sight. Then, a short time later, another shooting at a second mosque 3 miles away. More carnage.
And everybody just run toward the back doors just to save themselves. And first we hide behind the cars and, under the cars. And then when we see that firing is still on, we try to, jump the fence.
The most harrowing aspect, the attack was live streamed by the gunman on Facebook and posted on Twitter and other platforms. He used a body camera to show all the gory details. The apparent gunman was cornered and charged with murder. 2 other armed suspects were also caught. The police are investigating whether they're involved. None of the suspects were on terror watch lists.
The suspected main gunman is now identified as an Australian. He is appearing in court Saturday morning, New Zealand time, as, according to the Prime Minister, that country reflects on this chaos. Lou.
Greg, thank you. Greg Palcott. President Trump today addressed the massacre in New Zealand. He offered his condolences and the full support of the United States.
Earlier today, I spoke with Prime Minister Ardern of New Zealand to express the sorrow of our entire nation following the monstrous terror attacks at 2 mosques. It's a horrible, horrible thing. I told the Prime Minister that the United States is with them all the way, 100%, whatever they need, we will be there.
And our thoughts are with the people of New Zealand tonight. The president today, surrounded by members of law enforcement, border protection, angel parents, standing up for American security and proudly vetoing a resolution that opposed his national emergency declaration.
Consistent with the law and the legislative process designed by our founders, today I am vetoing this resolution. Congress has the freedom to pass this resolution, and I have the duty to veto it, and I'm very proud to veto it.
And in a very emotional signing ceremony, flanking the president were Attorney General William Barr and Vice President Mike Pence, both of whom strongly endorsed the declaration by the president.
The humanitarian and security crisis we have on the border right now is exactly the kind of emergency that presidents are permitted to address under the National Emergencies Act. As you alluded to yourself, in the past 40 years, there have been 59 emergencies declared, and many of these have dealt with political conditions in countries like Burundi, Sierra Leone, Belarus. The crisis that we're dealing with today is right on our doorstep, and it presents a real, clear, and present danger to the American people.
I don't know that I've ever been more proud to be standing next to your desk than I am today. With your strong support for the men and women in law enforcement, Customs and Border Protection, Homeland Security, and with I know what is your love and your heart for these angel parents, you're keeping your word by vetoing this legislation, by finding the available resources to build the wall, address this emergency, and secure our border.
And President Trump doing more to secure that border than any president, keeping his promises to prioritize the safety and the security of the American people. The president's veto goes a long way towards securing that border and protecting American communities from the influx of crime and drugs, sex trafficking. Nobody knows that better than our next guest, Tom Homan, former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Fox Business contributor. Tom, good to have you with us. It was an emotional ceremony at the White House, and you could see the president's support and his appreciation for law enforcement, for everyone in that room. The angel parents reciprocated. It was a stirring moment. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, one of the greatest presidents of my generation did exactly what he should have done, did exactly what he said he was going to do, and did exactly what the American people expect of their president. Do everything he can legally to protect this nation, protect his citizens. I respect this man greatly because he proved, again, like he's done so many times, again today, he proved he's a great president. Because he basically says, I will fight whoever I need to fight, including those within my own party, to do what's right for this nation. That's what a president's supposed to do, and that's what makes this man a great president.
And it is obviously not lost on anyone in that room, in law enforcement, serving the nation in any way, certainly the angel moms and leaders of communities, that the radical Dems and those rhinos, 12 rhino senators, who opposed this president, who opposed his fulfillment of his duties and obligations to the American people, his responsibilities under the Constitution to secure the nation, he had to fight to secure that declaration. This is going to have huge ramifications, don't you think?
Well, look, he's a fighter. If people think they're going to back this president down, he's going to run away, he likes a good fight. I mean, I've met him many times. This man will fight to do what he thinks right for this country. As far as the 12 Republican senators, I'd like to know, did they talk to one Border Patrol agent? Did they talk to any experts? I spent 34 years on the border. I've seen it. I've lived it. I'm telling you, I've done this job for 34 years. There's a crisis on the border. Anybody doesn't believe that is ignoring the data, ignoring the videos, ignoring the men and women on the ground who deal with this every day. So it's very disappointing. But if they think they're going to beat this man down, they're not. He's ready for a fight, and he proved that again today.
I don't know that they were trying to beat the man down as so much as they were trying to further injure a country that is right now wounded and in considerable pain. The radical Dems, those rhinos, greatly responsible for what pain we're going through. The American people understand this. And without this president, I believe his base, the supporters throughout the Republican Party, his numbers are 90% support among the Republican Party because he cares about them. He cares about the American people and the nation. This is, to me, it's a travesty that he's hounded. He is besieged by the left-wing media, the radical Dems, while he is the only one, it seems, at times, trying to do the right thing for this country.
Look, they can pick on his approval ratings all they want, but his approval ratings are a hell of a lot better than Congress's. Look, I said, I've done this for over 3 decades. Congress has failed for 3 decades to address the national security crisis on the border. We finally have a president who said he was going to secure the border, and he means it. He's going to do everything he can to secure this border. But I still say a big group are trying to beat this president down. They've never accepted him as their president, especially the Democrats. Look, I was out in the green room and Fox News, and I see all these articles up on the wall saying everybody's aghast with President Trump said he might not accept the results of the election back in 2016. With all these stories. And guess who didn't accept the results at the end? It was the people who says, shame on him for not accepting the results. They're trying to beat this man down, and they're not going to do it. I think he's a great president. I think he's going to stand strong, and he's going to fight.
Yeah, it is the sanctimonious and the hypocritical who challenged him on that question, whether they were in the media or whether they were in the Democratic Party. And by the way, some in the Republican Party, as I recall rather clearly. He is the one who's been betrayed, and they are the ones lacking the integrity and, frankly, the class to stand by an election that actually was the right result for this great nation. Tom Homan, thanks so much for being with us. Always great to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Still ahead, more on President Trump's veto of Congress's reckless emergency resolution.
Congress's vote to deny the crisis on the southern border is a vote against reality. It's against reality. It is a tremendous national emergency. It is a tremendous crisis.
And could Kim Jong-un resume nuclear testing? Could he resume missile tests? We'll take that up with General Jack Keane. We'll have his answers when we come back. Stay with us. Will he or will he not? North Korean officials saying that Kim Jong-un is deciding whether to suspend talks with the United States and resume nuclear and missile testing. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo insists that would be a promise broken, that he expects Kim to live up to his word, his promises made to President Trump at their Hanoi summit. Joining us tonight, retired 4-star General, Fox Business Chief Strategic Analyst, General Jack Keane. General, let's start with Mike Pompeo's confidence. Do you share it? General?
Yeah. I thought you were going to show a statement. I'm sorry.
No, do you share Mike Pompeo's confidence?
Well, I don't believe in taking Kim Jong-un's word on much of anything, to be frank about it, Lou. And I think history's on my side. But I was not in the negotiations either. But I do believe this. Kim Jong-un miscalculated at the Hanoi summit. He went there with the same essential game plan that he and his father and grandfather used with previous administrations. That is, give up a facility, nuclear facility that is, promise to give up nuclear weapons, but ask for sanction relief in return. For the life of me, I can't believe he didn't understand that Trump would not take that deal, given the relationship he established with him. And he went home I believe, with his tail between his legs a little bit, and he's got to deal with his elites and his hardliners. And what we're seeing from him now is he's trying to regain leverage. So he's saying, we may not continue negotiations. We may resume ballistic testing and nuclear testing. I frankly believe that he is going to resume negotiations because it's in his national interest. I do believe if he starts the missile testing, I think he also knows that President Trump will double down at that point. We're right back into the crisis on hostility mode. Military option will be back on the table. We will double down on sanctions. I don't think he wants that, so I don't believe he's going to do it.
Interestingly, Israel may have provided a very clear window into the future and realpolitik. When Hamas unleashed 2 rockets against Tel Aviv, there was no question what would happen in the Israeli security meeting called by the Prime Minister. Immediately, 100 Hamas targets attacked in Gaza. That kind of clarity does not exist for the United States, whether it be with North Korea. One does not know what the president's choice would be if Kim resumed missile testing or nuclear testing. We do know that for the past 5 years that the Chinese have been unrelentingly attacking, carrying out cyber attacks against U.S. interests, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. military, without response, without counterattack. And my God, how in the world is anyone to figure out what will be the appropriate reaction of the U.S. government to what is clearly an act of war?
Well, we can take some of the page out of the Israelis, and that's why I'm sure you're bringing that up here. As the Navy Secretary said, and when he put his review on the table here, it was absolutely stunning and alarming in the penetration that the Chinese have been able to achieve and absolutely taking some of our most classified secrets that we have. They are now in their hands. And what is happening to us here? We are losing the cyber war, and yet we have the most sophisticated offensive cyber capability. We don't have as...
Do we really? Well, that's the question.
No, we do. But here's the problem, Lou. We don't use it. So when we get attacked by the Chinese, let's say they went after one of our defense industries and they went in there and they stole something that's highly classified from us, we can track that. And we should conduct then immediately a cyber offensive operation to destroy the source from which that came. Therefore, the next time when they're thinking of doing something they have to calculate what is the cost of doing that if the United States is going to attack me for having done that. And we have been risk-averse to a fault about this, Lou, in not using that capability.
You know, risk-averse are words that I don't expect to come from your lips at all. As talking about the U.S. military, but it is clearly that. It's also clearly a legacy of the Obama strategic patience, the passivity that was rationalized doctrinally by that administration for 8 years. The American people right now have to be wondering what has happened to our government, what has happened to our country, that we are watching this occur without a response. But I'm curious about what's happening to the generals, the admirals, who make up our military leadership, that they have become incapable of both victory, whether it be in Afghanistan, whether it be in cyberspace, or mustering a response that would be respected by the Chinese, who are picking our bones clean right now.
Yeah, I mean, we have been slow to recognize the seriousness of this cyber warfare. And as a result, because we haven't been responding aggressively, everybody's up in their game. The Russians up in their games. Obviously, the Chinese, as you mentioned, but so are the Iranians, and so even the North Koreans are up in their offensive cyber game here. So there's an awakening that's taking place, Lou, and I hope action is going to follow this awakening. The president was over in the Pentagon today. I hope this was on the table in discussions with him, and we're going to see some action.
And General Joe Dunford, speaking of a list of things the president might speak to the generals about, pointing out that that the Chinese government is in effect benefiting the PLA, the Chinese military, from Google directly. This is the same company, big tech company, that didn't want to be associated with the U.S. military. What should the president do?
Well, certainly the president has a pulpit and he can use it. And he's got a lot of leverage, and he should put a spotlight on it. The fact that the employees in that company go to the management and say, we really don't want to be involved in a company that may be contributing to acts of war. But yet they're doing business with the Chinese and assisting them, at least indirectly, in their wartime development. I mean, the U.S. defense industry is powerful, and certainly the .com industry, we still dominate, losing some of that to Huawei, to be sure. And we have always had a close relationship with these industries. Well, and I think that it's shameful that that is actually taking place, and more importantly, it puts us at risk.
General Jack Keane, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good talking to you, Lou.
Up next, President Trump stands firm on the need to secure our borders and to protect the country despite the radical Dems and the rhinos.
The national emergency I declared last month was authorized by Congress under the 1976 National Emergencies Act. And there haven't been too many that are a bigger emergency than we have right at our own border.
And guess which political genius, high energy, creative, a doer, Jeb Bush. He challenged the president in 2016. He thinks there should be another one in 2020. Good to know. We take that up next with our panel. Before we go to break, a look at the national debt, $22 trillion and climbing. And yes, that will be an issue in 2020. We'll be right back. Stay with us. He's crawled out into the public to tell America that anti-Trump CNN could really benefit through a Republican primary challenge in 2020. Listen to the savant.
I think someone should run, just because Republicans ought to be given a choice. It's hard to beat a sitting president, but to have a conversation about what it is to be a conservative, I think it's important. The Democrats now are proposing new ideas, some of which I think are way out there. And if Republicans think they can just say that's bad and not offer a compelling alternative, that could be bad for us.
Honestly, Jeb Bush is ignoring everything that President Trump has done, accomplished, achieved, that are historic in the first 2 years of his presidency, just blithely. It's one thing to be low energy, it's another to be low retention. Republican strategist, former chair of the Nevada Republican Party, Amy Tarkarian joins us, as well as David Bossie, former Trump campaign aide, Citizens United, and author. Good to have you both. Amy, let me first apologize for kicking your name.
It's okay.
And to say to you, great to see you. Your thoughts about Jeb Bush and how much he brings to the Republican Party, and how revolting is it that he would even suggest that he's a conservative?
Oh, I found this extremely comical. You said it. He is low energy. You know, we can go back over and over.
I stole that from President Trump, by the way. I've got to acknowledge that.
Yeah. You know, please clap. I mean, how pathetic. I mean, he's a sore loser, isn't he? It's so easy for other people to stand at a distance and to say, you know what, someone else should do this. Why don't you go and run? It's a lot of hard work to run, and it's a lot of work to fundraise. He fundraised upwards to, what, $130 million and didn't have much to show for it. So I think he just needs to take a seat and maybe go to a country club and hobnob with some of his buddies in Florida.
Could you hear Axelrod cheering him on as he sat there? I mean, it's appalling, and to know that he's simply now just a tool of the left, for crying out loud. David, we just watched this president stand up for the American people, had to fight 12 rhino senators, and probably a couple more wanted to jump in there, and the radical Dems. And thank God we've got this president, because he's got a party that is so splintered and so disgustingly weak. It's sickening.
Well, he is a tool of the left, and this is a pathetic excuse for him to show his sour grapes. And let me just say, Lou,
no, we're done with Jeb Bush. I'm moving on from Jeb Bush. You know, I can't take any more of that.
He didn't say that in 1992 when his dad was president. He didn't say it in 2004 when his brother was running for re-election. Jeb Bush is a pathetic loser, and he should just stay out of the limelight.
And what about those 12 rhino senators I asked you about? What about those Dems? What about the party that's splintered? I mean, these are egg-sucking, spineless, pathetic creatures. I mean, they really are.
Look, this president made a promise to the American people to secure the border, and these 12 senators have let down the American people, in my opinion. The Republicans who voted against this president, these appropriators who now have found a constitutional question. Where were they doing this when it was Barack Obama or Bill Clinton? They didn't do that then, and they're doing it today to undermine this president. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances.
Yeah, unfortunate, like a national emergency, and these are deniers, for crying out loud.
Yes.
Amy, your thoughts here as the president stands up for the American people. What do you think are the likely ramifications for the country, for the party going into 2020?
Well, I would like to know, why aren't we listening to the experts? You know, this is the second time now that he's had sheriffs from across the nation, that he's had Border Patrol agents, that he's had angel moms come out and plead to the American public on why this is necessary, why this is important, and why we need the funding for the border
And with him
security.
today in the White House as he signed the veto of that ignorant resolution.
Absolutely. And so this is mind-blowing to me. And so I think that the general public has had enough of this. You know, I'm actually from Las Vegas, but I'm currently up in northern Nevada in the Reno area. And we recently had an illegal alien murder 4 innocent people from the Gardnerville and Reno area. Enough is enough.
David, you get the last word here tonight.
It is a national emergency, Lou. We have to solve this problem. The amount of drugs, illegals pouring over our borders must be stopped. And this president is standing tall for border security, and it's terrible when Republicans don't support him in this effort. And we have to have an answer for that.
Yeah, I think it's called a primary.
That's
and
right.
you raise as much money as you can, and you beat every one of them like a drum. David Bosse, thanks for being with us. Amy Tarkanian, thank you very much. Always good to see you both.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, the president spells out the true scope of the crisis at our border.
Last month, more than 76,000 illegal migrants arrived at our border. We're on track for 1 million illegal aliens to rush our borders. People hate the word invasion, but that's what it is. It's an invasion of drugs and criminals and people.
And this president standing up for America. We take that up with Diamond and Silk right after these quick messages. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Headlines tonight. The Israeli military says 2 rockets fired by Hamas towards Tel Aviv were likely launched by mistake. Despite that assessment by the IDF, they fired missiles at 100 different targets in Gaza. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, warned Hamas today that, quote, "It won't be quiet in Gaza if it's not quiet in Tel Aviv." They proved their point. A new report from NATO shows the United States shouldered 70% of NATO's expenses in 2018. 70%. And just 6 other countries met the president's target to commit 2% of their annual economic output to defense spending. NATO's Secretary General says he expects more increases in the future. And we know the president certainly does as well. Former White House economic advisor Gary Cohn, you remember him? He says the Trump administration is desperate to bring their trade dispute with China to an end. Cohn is ignoring, perhaps, the White House when they say they'll walk away from any bad deal for America. Cohn apparently just desperately seeking some attention. We thought we'd give him a little tonight, undeserving though he may be. Joining us tonight, social media superstars, President Trump's most loyal supporters, Diamond and Silk, hosts of the Fox Nation show, Diamond and Silk, and it is great to see you guys, as always. Welcome to the show, and I've got to ask you, This president standing up, vetoing the resolution, despite the rhinos, despite the radical Dems, taking care of the American people and his constitutional duty. Your thoughts?
Well, listen, the president is committed to making sure we have border security and to making sure that the American people are safe in this country. And we say shame on those 12 Republicans that sided with Democrats. We call them now the new swamp-ass because they went along, singing along with Democrats. And the president had to veto this because of their doings. But I'm glad that the president did it. Listen, we are going to have a secure border once and for all. We cannot have drugs pouring into our country. We cannot have things like rape taking place at the borders. It's time to secure our borders and solve this issue once and for all.
Yeah, you know, I can just imagine Tom Donahue, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, you know, the Koch brothers wringing their hands. What are we going to do? They're actually going to secure the border. That's going to screw up our financial plans for years. The business community in this country should apologize to the American people for where they've led this country through president after president until this one, who said enough is enough.
That's right. And you got to remember, they continue to kick the same can down the road. Administration after administration, they say it's a crisis. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So I'm so glad to have a president, President Donald J. Trump, who said enough is enough. Let's stop kicking this same can down the road and do something about it finally. And I'm so glad that he vetoed everything that he did today. And he should veto those other 12 Republicans that went against the American people.
And Jeb Bush today, returning to the public eye. I know you have to be just as excited as I was to hear his thoughts about the 2020. There should be a primary challenger to this president. Jeb Bush thought that was himself in 2016, but then he ended up mincemeat in front of the Trump juggernaut. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to remember, low-energy Jeb Bush has probably been asleep for 2 years.
That's right.
He don't even know the magnificent job, or he don't have a clue about the magnificent job that the president is doing for our country. But here's the problem. President Trump is a man like this here. He has the ability to pick everyone that's running against him apart piece by piece. And when he's done, ain't none of them going to be able to put themselves back together again. And if you don't believe us, you ask Crooked Hillary. She's still running around asking everybody what happened. None of them is going to be able to beat him.
That's right.
Even if it's a Republican going up against President Trump is going to win in 2020.
And notice Jeb Bush said somebody else needs to run against him. That's because Jeb Bush is not man enough to do it himself.
Diamond and Silk telling it like it is, as always. Ladies, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
See you next time. Up next, President Trump says we'll find out about a China trade deal. He thinks it may take 3 to 4 weeks to get some clarity. We take that up and much more. Gary Kaltbaum joins us here next. Stay with us. We're going to take a look at this Trump economy. Stay with us. The Dow rallying 139 points. The S&P gained 14. The Nasdaq up 58. Volume on the big board picking up here on a Friday. 3.9 billion shares. The Dow up 2%. The S&P gaining 3 this week. The Nasdaq up. Are you ready for this? 4%? Can that be right? Can that be right? Crude oil also up 4%. We're talking $59 a barrel here, folks. Gold up nearly a point. Silver gaining 1%. What's going on with the metals, commodities? What's happening? A reminder, listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Well, I said what's happening, and to let us know what's happening, President of Kaltbaum Capital Management, Fox Business contributor Gary Kaltbaum. Great to have you here.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you.
This is a market this week that, I mean, it's a signal moment, it seems, in the market. I just can't divine what's going on. Let's start with equities.
Just watch technology stocks. They have been leading the markets up and down forever, and they're in fuego right now. And what's interesting, what hasn't happened is some of the big names are really starting to get going again. Apple, which was dead money for a while, that's starting to rip to the upside, and that's helping. You saw the NASDAQ this week. Amazon, which has been dead money in the last few months, that's starting to move. And again,
well, they're starting to talk about perhaps a margin actually focusing on profit. I mean, Bezos is losing his mind.
Well, I know he's done something right throughout the years, getting near $1 trillion. I own the stock in, I think, 2001. Why did I sell it? That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's, well, I think the news would be good enough to carry you through on that stock alone. But it is striking to see Amazon talking about margins, profitability, focusing as part of the direction. Bezos has never said that before. That should be worth, it seems, a few points alone in the stock.
You know what's funny? It used to move stronger when they had losses and nobody can define.
Right.
The fact of the matter is they're making big money right now. They're making big money in a lot of things. And the guy just seems to have done a lot of things right. I think the only issue is valuation at this point in time because earnings are growing well. And most importantly, sales are growing pretty darn well in a market right now where sales haven't been so strong.
And speaking of mistakes made and choices made, Jerome Powell, I mean, everyone's excited about this guy. Suddenly, he is learning lessons, and it seems that they are taking. Is that too optimistic an assessment on my part of the august Fed chair?
January 4th, 10:30 a.m., the 180 Powell, I call it. He learned his lesson, and I'll tell you what helps him out. We have a 10-year at 2.6, a 30-year at 3%. He's not going above that. So there's no more raising of rates. You have Europe and Japan easing. You have China easing. And we have the easy money scenario again. And that's what market's been loving for 10 years. So Powell is now on the market side again.
And everyone is being turned into something of a globalist, no matter their investment strategy that they're attempting, at least. Looking at China, worrying about its economy cratering, exports dropping, fell 30%, while their imports fell 5%. And suddenly there's a one-day reaction, but now everything is fine again, and people are talking about, the president notes, 3 to 4 weeks before we know what's going on with China. Your thoughts?
China injected $87 billion into their money easing project a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and the market started doing better. But there's no doubt they're heading south, their economy. When they report 6%, I call it 2%. You also have areas of Europe. They're in contraction. Japan's contracting. We are the best by far. And I was worried that we would be taken down by them. But now I'm starting to see that maybe Europe's starting to stabilize. If they get going again, I think we go back to 3 and 4% GDP here.
Yeah, and the president seems very confident of 3%. And I'm going to follow his forecast because he has been right. The professionals have been wrong.
Lots of them.
Lots of them. And the Fed, disastrously wrong. And I wonder if he had not interceded, would that 90-day nightmare inaugurated by Jerome Powell, do you think that would have continued?
I complained about Trump complaining about Powell. I am no longer complaining about Trump complaining about Powell. I was wrong. Powell was going too far, too fast. The bond market was telling him so, and he was not listening. And I think that sometimes the markets are yelling and screaming at you, and he answered back. And I think part of it was Trump. I think part of it was Mnuchin right around Christmas time. It was no coincidence that right around then is when they had the big phone call and the big meeting.
Yeah, Mnuchin, by the way, I believe he recommended Jerome Powell to the president, which I thought was an interesting choice.
He's on the good side now.
Okay, as long as he stays there. I think that Fed chairs and investors need to do the same thing. Pay close attention to markets. They'll lead you where you need to go.
I say less is more from Fed chairs.
Amen, brother. Gary Calva, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Good to see you. Up next, the president earns high praise from law enforcement for securing our southern border and supporting them.
This is not political propaganda. We have a dire crisis on our southwest border, and America's sheriffs stand behind the President of the United States 100%. He has had our back, he's had the Americans' back, and we stand behind you solidly for what you're doing here today. This is unprecedented for a president to take this type of action. And we commend you, we applaud you, and I salute you, sir.
More on that when we come right back. Stay with us.
in votes because people just did not like her.
All right. We don't have a lot of time here. I just want to go around the table lightning round right now. This school scandal is amazing. Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin getting dumped by Hallmark this week. Her daughter says he faked his way through college. Your thoughts?
It bothers me so much that her daughter, Olivia Jade, had deals with Sephora and Tresemme when she's literally done nothing in her life at age 19, talking about all she wanted to do was party in college, didn't want to study. She's literally accomplished nothing, and she has over 1 million followers on YouTube, Instagram, and leveraged those into deals. That bothers me.
Well, there are dogs that have 1 million followers on YouTube, and they haven't done much but be cute.
She says her dad faked his way through college.
And so, what? 2 wrongs make a right. I think USC should just expel her, let her earn her way into a school, and her parents actually earned their way from no education, so why can't she learn that?
Look, I think what happened is obviously horrific, but I also think that when I looked at the statement, she was saying that her father was sort of lying to his parents about what he was doing with his tuition money.
Wow. Okay, legacy. We'll see how it works out. They're all just alleged and accusations.
True, it's true.
Lisa, Rochelle, and Susan, have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you, Harris.
Thanks for being with me. That's it for the story on this Friday night. I'll see you again on Monday, outnumbered at noon Eastern. Have a great weekend.